Shout out to our season opener, Gabe. Hey, Wade, how you doing?
Life is good, Rob. How's things over there?
Well, it's actually rather cool out here. It's the pre-summer coolness, which keeps the country nice and nippy. But
Pre-summer, so it's down to about 90?
It's even down to 73 out here.
What? Really?
Yeah, so it's a good time to be here. But around March and April, the thermometer from hell is going to turn on. And everybody's going to be cooking. So, yeah. So, Wade, we got somebody special who I've been following for some time, who has done a lot of editorial translation works of some of the greatest texts like the Grand Grimoire, the Red Dragon. But he is primarily also an author from Hadean Press. Of the magical art, but he was kind enough to send us a copy of his books or some of his books. What do you got for us today? What did you think about it?
This book is amazing. First of all, I love interlinear translations, so you can see like one side, so we've got the original French, and then the other side, the direct transliteration of it, so that way they don't have so-and-so interpreted and said, well, this is what I think he meant, and then they modify it beyond the direct translation. But this is the inerrant French translation. And my French isn't that great, but I did go over it, a couple of the lines, and checked it out. Perfect translation. This is what I would have wanted to do with the Lemegeton, breaking it down section by section, and I did not have the resources at the time. But I got to tell you, this is really something because there's all kinds of, spells and whatnot in there, and a little bit of herbalism or herbal magic. And of course, all of our little buddies. This is definitely worth it at any price.
Yeah,
I love it.
We were also granted copies of the magical art, and you were mentioning to me that was something one of your students tried before. We want to share with us a bit about that, like what you thought of the magical art, because I was blown away by it.
The magical art, this was something that I've actually seen authors in the distant past try it, and then some in the recent past try it, to basically say, okay, I'm going to take all the grimoires and put them all together and put together a complete grimoire of all of these arts. And the only time I've seen anyone, I even saw them try to do that with the different lineages of British traditional witchcraft. And in pretty much every case, it's all gone horribly, except for Palo Kimbisa, which kind of took the Palo Mayombe and the Palo Monte and the Palo Bruyumba and made one combined tradition of it. That would work, but that's a whole different thing.
Exactly.
This one, though, I saw it, everything meshed together very nicely. There was no extraneous stuff thrown in. All the stuff that didn't need to be there was gone. It was succinct, it was to the point, and it was very workable. I liked it.
That's what I liked about it. A lot of authors who tend to do things like that tend to get lost in their own dialogue and rhetoric, and it just ends up confusing the hell out of everyone.
Well, it's easy if you have, say, if you have a car lot with 30 different cars in it, you could say, okay, I could build one supercar. Well, yeah, that's great. That's 30 cars. You've got 120 wheels. You don't need a car with 120 wheels. You only need the 4 best ones. But too many authors try to include every piece of every tradition in it, and it just ends up becoming a big tangle.
Yeah, and you know what was interesting? You actually said that this was volume 1, so it makes me wonder maybe there's going to be future volumes to that. So without any further ado, we are honored to guest today, author, translator, and magician, Mr. Aaman Lamba. Hello, Aaman. Welcome.
Hey, guys. Thank you for having me, and I caught a bit of what you all were talking, so thank you so much. You're most kind. Very happy to be here, and in Magique.me. It is all about magic, right? It's all about your personal magic and your path. So Magique.me is a perfect kind of description of, so to speak, the
Magic.tv. Magic.tv.
Magic.tv. Well, television, right, is seeing from a conjurations, and magic in many respects is what you see and what you visualize and then you bring to reality, right? It's in fact, I mentioned that in volume 1 of the magical art, which is it is the art of making the imaginal real, and
Uh-huh.
that's television. Yeah. So that's awesome. Yeah.
So tell us about you, Aman. When did your story as a magician begin? As in,
Wow.
when did you get into the path that we never get off?
Sure. No, I would say I've been a magician in various forms for a very long time. As I grew up in India, and uh, I'd say spirituality is very much part of our tradition, and nothing is kind of out there or forbidden per se. You can follow whatever path you want, right? And so, growing up, I was exposed to a lot of great concepts.
Mhm,
Very young, I read the Mahabharata, like I'm talking about extremely young, right? 3, 4.
mhm,
And it really had an impact on me. And, there's a lot of what we may consider magic, but, was pretty much par for the course in those books. But as I grew older, my first, I'd say, formal encounter with what Western ceremonial magic was, A. White's book, The Book of Ceremonial Magic, which I got this beautiful copy of when I was about 13 or so. I
yeah.
didn't quite relate to it, but I looked at it and then I tried it out, right? And the very first thing I did was I think I raised the wind, right?
Mhm,
And it worked. Like I got this huge, little storm in the yard, and it was pretty intense. So I liked it, and I also loved the beautiful seals and images there. And interestingly, that book just went kind of missing. So I wonder where it went from my bookshelf. But
Was that Arthur Waite's book?
yes, A. White, the Book of Ceremonial Magic. It was this big, uh, kind of, in the 70s, they used to make these big glossy editions. So it was a very
Yes.
nice hardcover, big one, right?
mm,
Which had the seals and various text. Arthur White, yeah.
Yeah.
So and then essentially over time, like I maintained an interest in various forms of philosophy and discovery until about, I'd say, about 10 years ago. I really got more serious on it. I started reading, I started researching and trying things out. I explored the Thelema models. I explored various forms of traditional witchcraft or Western witchcraft. And I have a background in, I love reading and I love languages, and so I've studied French all through school and stuff. So somewhere along the way, I started looking at the original sources, and that's when pretty much I'd say the early pre-COVID years, I really got into the field of magic, as it were, right?
mhm,
This kind of converged also with my own evolution kind of philosophically. And being, I kind of see myself as a gnostic polytheist, right? So I'm
mhm,
open to all forms of interaction with the universe. And I also see myself as a transcendentalist, but also an immanentalist, which is to say a cross between Spinoza and Kant, right? But that, I'll keep that aside because that may be a little broader than the field of magic. But in I really got I've practiced Buddhism, practiced Hinduism, very deep study of Christianity and other faiths, and uh, I got really into formal study of magic, yeah, I would say in about 2019, 2018. And then COVID was a very interesting period because it gave us a lot of time to sit around and read and research. And I was working with Jake Stratton Kent and Stian and the whole David Rankin and all of the awesome crowd. So I did do my first work, which was the Grand Grimoire. It was a translation from the original sources, and we're really lucky that we have access. Really, they exist. A lot of people don't go and look at the original text, right? They rely on pulp editions or what claim to be the best translations. Now, the Grand Grimoire itself, right, and we may get into that a little in a bit, uh, was very poorly translated all along, right? Horrible, hashes of the text, and it had this notoriety to be a pretty bad, dangerous book. So I, when I really got into it and started referencing the various, editions and manuscripts in the Bibliothèque Nationale, I realized that that wasn't the case. I mean, that there was a lot of depth there, right? So I decided to do that translation that you all have. And it is a, by the way, interestingly, I should note, Wade, it's while I do refer to it as an interlinear edition, it's technically a parallel corpora edition, because the two bodies are side by side. But I don't think anyone would have related to the parallel corpora, so interlinear was easier.
Aman,
uh,
I have a question.
yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
India already is such a powerful and well established, how do I say, spiritual tradition. Was there anything about what was there any reason why you chose to go the Western ceremonial path instead of just focusing on already the inherent natural traditions that your culture has?
I'd say, I while I've been very exposed to, say, Asian and many traditions in that sense,
Mm-hmm.
I don't quite see them as magical, right? For
Yeah.
me, and this is really the difference between what we tend to consider magical has to have a sense of the numinous, or the sense of something that
Yes.
alerts, awakes, brings you out of the ordinary, right? And that's part of the reason why I would say I don't quite see that, right? I see a lot of value, of course, in those traditions and in those texts, but I don't see them as magical in the truth, in the sense we use magical, right? I mean, I won't. It's a loaded term, so I mean, I would not really frame that the way I am now, but that I'm thinking about it. But that's really how I would say it, right? That being said, it's just that I guess I'm currently working on this field, right? I have looked at certain other themes, and I might explore them in the past, but in the future. But that's where I am right now.
All right. So if you don't mind us asking, like,
Mhm.
aside from AEY, did you ever have any formal, how do I say, traditional initiations like OTO, Golden Dawn, or anything like that? Or were you just self-taught?
I have not been a formally initiated member of any of these traditions, right? I see
Mm-hmm.
myself, and as a kind of magical, independent discoverer, right? We are all on our own paths, right? And the as the Hermetics would say, that all of them can be bottled down or summarized as one path, right? Improve yourself and grow, right? So yeah. So I think I have had some interactions with some of those more formal paths, but I've chosen not to, so to speak, join them. Right? I
Mm-hmm.
have been a member of certain, uh, you know, philosophical groups and even say Buddhist orders and stuff, but I still don't see myself as being really a member of them. Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so we want to talk more about the magical art. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the magical art is by far such an amazing contribution to modern magical practice because,
Sure.
like Wade said, it does what a lot of authors have failed to do, which is it brings these different practices, these different aspects of grimoire art and magical art under one comprehensible volume. What were your original inspirations in creating that book?
Sure, thank you. So, if you look at the, and it's part of I have a very intricate kind of tree that I'm working towards, right? I have future books that have been written, one or two which are already with, the publisher mode. So, I'm not going to talk about those particularly, but the Grand Grimoire, as I worked on, I found it to be a foundational text of magic, right? It kind of precedes, although if you look at the clavis, the key of Solomon, it has a certain structure, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
Grand Grimoire had its own somewhat deviant structure, right? And a set of 27 spirits and so on. As I went in and as I continued to kind of work with those spirits, as well as really study Jake Stratton's phenomenal work that he's done and interact with him, we had numerous discussions on what really these foundational texts were, right? And Jake truly believed that one of them was the Grimoire Verum, right, which he
Mm-hmm.
did phenomenal work on. And so while researching or reading through the Grimoire Verum and his texts, I found the MS-983 in the Wellcome collection that
Mm-hmm.
was quite evidently a precursor to the Grimoire Verum, right? It has a lot of the original the content, but in a earlier version, right? And the
Yeah.
magical art, which is in this beautiful hardcover edition that Hadean has put out, as well as an equally nice paperback, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is a translation of MS-983, but of course, my own evolution as an author, I took great pains to kind of reconstruct aspects of it, put in a very extensive introduction and very detailed footnotes. Also correlating it to the somewhat the standard translations from Joseph Peterson, Jake Stratton Kent, and others, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I did that, it really has a very comprehensive set of tools, techniques. It has, of course, the instruments of the art, as it's called, right, with which are pretty much from the Key of Solomon, but it actually goes further with a very intricate set of workings based on the heptameron, a very
Mm-hmm.
early version of the heptameron, I should say, including a specific operation that hints at some Arabic influences that works with Maimon, the king of Saturday, or the Jinn king of Saturday, if you go from that direction, right? And so I found that this was really, really powerful, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
when I went deeper into this, like many of these grimoires, it had a selection of psalms to the angels, right, the Shem Furash angels. While working on that, I was kind of found some discrepancies, and my very good friend and deep scholar, Bal Kadmon, who's a phenomenal occultist and author, and I would recommend you have him on your show. So we discussed that particular section, right? And he's done some pretty extensive work from his own tradition, on the Shem Furash angels. And so what I did is I put in a fully corrected, set of psalms, the right references, how those angel names are derived and what they mean, and so on, and really how you kind of work with them through the different directions and the psalms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So really, I found all of this came together, right? The heptameron gives you a set of directional and kind of elemental spirits. The grimoire verum section gives you the kind of really the let's say the necromantic spirits, and then you have the angels giving you kind of the higher spirit, right? So you get a kind of three registers of magic that you can operate on based on what you're trying to do. And without giving too much away, volume 2 of the magical art
We're just
goes
about
a bit further, or much further, I should say, in that direction, with something that's even an earlier precursor of these texts, right? And has even more scale and depth, but that's for the future, so I'm going to hold off on that. But yes, the magical art is very important. The appendix, actually, I used an actual operation from it to summon Lucifer, do some interactions, asking some questions using a pendulum, got valid answers, but and so I test these things, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, because
So
another thing I wanted to say about this is that a lot of people create books like these, but without the actual intention of practical application. Sometimes I've seen a lot of authors
mhm.
do this. Just throw all the historical text into a book, and it's like up to you to figure out how to get this to work. What I like about your magical art, it actually seems to be intended to be used, which
Right.
is really admirable because,
Oh
like I
yeah,
said, there are
you can even see like in the parts where he's got, the spirit. It's done classic style. It's like, oh yeah, you've got large sigil, large print down below, picture of your guy and the description, but it's only this one guy here in facing pages.
Right.
So
So
you
you can
can
actually
crack it
copy
open
it
on
and
your
work with
altar
it.
and have it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
exactly for
And
the working
no, you're
man's
absolutely right. And to
grimoire.
that point, right, Wade and Robert, I'm fairly convinced that the actual manuscript that I'm referencing here, or both of them, these were working, texts, right? Because you'll see these notes that are pretty much referencing, self-referential, right? So these are not just like, a scribe in a monastery just
Mhm.
copying it for, because they've got to deliver that
Right.
to somebody as a
Yeah.
print, right? It's
Yes,
that
exactly.
individuals, because there's a very specific reference to locations in France and the spirit of France that I found nowhere else, right? In
Mhm.
this text called Aschel. So there's evidently conscious selections, right? These are intentional texts in that sense.
Mhm.
Well,
All right,
yeah, I
I have a
mean, for the
question
most
for you.
part, these books were like somebody's notes. Like he already
Yes,
knew how to do it, but he had to write down like the conjurations, the names, the sigils, all that. But it's just his notes, so he
Mhm.
doesn't have to have everything memorized.
that's correct.
Now,
Yeah.
there's another question I wanted to ask you. There's been a lot of other grimoires and other texts out there that have notoriety to it, like example, the Black Dragon grimoire and stuff like that. Will we expect to see these less known grimoires in future editions of the magical art?
Uh, in a general sense, yes. Right
Mhm.
now, volume two is kind of on the same path, so it kind of bookends it. But as I'm finding, right, as I'm going deeper down the substrate, so if you really look at it, I've gone from the late, the 18th century back to the early 18th century, and now I'm actually pushing into the 17th century, and there it starts kind of really getting quite interesting, because you're working, and I some of my most recent work is with stuff from the 14th and 15th centuries. So I'm finding, that there is so much uh, layers that you need to kind of peel away to get to the depths. And everyone was doing magic back then, right? Whether they called it magic through the licit church mode or through their own. I mean, to do you had to do it like that. Was There were no scientists or things. So there was either a low magic mode of doing it or a high magic, and in fact, most people who had access kind of applied both, right?
Mhm.
So four queens or nobility of England in the 15th century were charged of witchcraft, and at least one was executed. So that was a pretty big thing. It's like in 100 years, four of them. So everyone was engaged with it. So we barely scratched the surface in terms of how active and living texts these were. I do intend to kind of go into those themes, and of course, Stephen Skinner, David Rankine, Gal Sofer, and others are actually showing the way these texts kind of came together and interchanged concepts and ideas. So there's a lot of work out there, still to be done.
I don't want to preempt anything, but are there any intentions of doing a magical art focusing on Enochian? Because that seems to be getting a lot
Uh,
of attention nowadays.
Great. Enochian magic is one of my keen interests, especially thanks to Lon Milo Duquette, who's done the
Yes.
best, Enochian vision magic text. And one of the interesting things he did early during COVID, right? I have this almost magical history of COVID that I might write someday, because I've seen that, and I maybe I'll talk about my own experience in a bit, but uh, Lon started doing these kind of video lectures. And early in COVID, we actually summoned or worked through the Aethers, right? It was, I think, the 30th Aether. And that
Hmm.
kind of centered us a lot, right? So I do have a keen interest in the Enochian texts. I have a whole section of my library around them. Uh, Again, one needs to find something that's truly you don't want to just rehash what's already there. So I don't think I have a very well formed concept of what that might look like, but it is something I'm interested in. I do have an excellent uh, no wooden sigillum de Amet. I have a phenomenal black mirror from Mexico, and a big obsidian black mirror, somewhat similar to what our friend John D used, and that's delivered some phenomenal results in terms of scrying. So quite possibly, yes. In some point in the future, I expect I may, but I'm not sure how it would shape up.
No,
Wonderful.
you
All right.
made an interesting point there.
Yeah.
I noticed that when you're talking about everybody that was being shut in during COVID, and then there's like this eruption of magical books. And I'm wondering if that's a coincidence that so many of these books kind of became public after the Black Plague. If
That's
people
an
just
excellent point.
decided to sit down and write all of this stuff out, or if they were just
Right.
sick
So
of rattling around the house like an angry ghost.
yeah, so there is indeed a correlation between great events, or big transformational events, and the outpouring of learning. It could be some sort of interaction between the higher worlds and this physical plane. It could be discovery and people sitting down and thinking, having time to think. And the Black Death is indeed one example of that. If you go a bit further, this whole the expansion, really the I should say the colonial expansion, led to a massive outpouring of concepts from the Caribbean and from Africa and Asia, as well as when Napoleon kind of expanded, like basically feudal Europe was very shut in, right? So when he broke down those walls of Spain and took over Venice and all of that, that created this massive information exchange that pretty much hadn't happened for hundreds of years, right? Those so and then we had the occult revival of the 19th century, and then of course what we're going through now, where we live in this huge access to like everything. Like right in front of me, I have the Steganographia, I have the Summa Sacra Magique, I have the Swan Book of Honorius, all of this stuff, right? No one had access to it back then. I have Jake's excellent final book. So that's the power of where we live now, right, in this time. Yes, you're absolutely right. There's these points in time that give us access, and it only seems to build on each other. Yeah.
Not to mention too, the videos that started coming out by qualified magicians like Lon, like Marco Visconti, were actually a pushback for the witch talk phenomenon. Because during the whole COVID period, there were all these douche canoes releasing unqualified magical content online, and it was flooding the market. And it kind of pushed the real practitioners like Lon to actually sit in front of a camera and start giving out genuine content for the genuine practitioner. Because I remember during COVID, that was a huge phenomenon, that there were these weirdos saying, let's curse the moon, let's summon Lucifer using a piece of bay leaf, and it was diluting the magical market. But I think that the counterance of that was beautiful things came, because people started releasing good content. People like Foolish Fish, people like Jack Grail, people like Lon started making real practice more accessible. And I think that that's the next generation of practice coming up. Which brings me to my last question before we go to the next segment. Do you have any plans?
Yeah, I want to just add something, though, reflect on what you just said, right?
Go ahead.
You're right that there's a high amount of, delusion, if you want to use that term, but, hype maybe, right? Although I will say, one is that segment is a very niche segment, all said and done, right? There's a much larger spectrum. I mean, all the really good stuff isn't online, right? It's out there in, Sonora, or in, the market in Mexico, or in, Asia, in Thailand, and so on, right? So the really good stuff is what it is. One could see, witch talk as a form of low magic or pop culture magic, which kind of always was there, right? In the cunning folk and stuff. And they all claimed, their magic did the best stuff, right? That being said, I mean, we are really lucky that, Lon and Marco and Mitch Horowitz and so many people are actually putting together that stuff. And we have, we are getting, and David Rankin's phenomenal grimoire encyclopedia and so on are all coming as a reliable source, right? There's always going to be pop editions. There's always going to be now, I guess, AI generated junk, right? But we've got to we've got to know what's reliable, right? And somewhat use those, but people are going to go where they go, right?
Which,
Hey
which brings
Rob,
me to my next.
did I ever tell you
Go ahead.
why I thought that Witch Talk was secretly genius?
Uh-huh.
Why?
Okay, you know the best way to get an answer, like you say, what's a good cleaning product? You don't just ask on the internet. You post the wrong answer, and
Yep.
900 people are going to come forward to correct you.
True.
So if they come up in Witch Talk and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're going to summon, we're going to summon Satan and make him wash our feet because he's all cool like that," and all of these other people are going to flood the market with actual stuff. So yeah, like if you didn't know any magic, that would be the best way to go about it, because people will swing down out of the damn trees to educate you when you start posting stuff like that. Just
Very
my own
true. It's
little
a
canon why it was
control.
secretly
No,
genius.
no, that's absolutely right. Yeah.
Which brings me to my next question, Aman.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it seems to me that a lot of people are getting on the distant remote teaching module, jumping on to creating very good quality content that's available to learn, to enroll courses online. Do you have anything like that lined up down the pipeline that you'll be teaching people, or is that something that you kind of want to stay away from?
Um, I have considered it, right? It requires a much greater level of, time commitment, investment,
Mm-hmm.
making sure it's well structured and so on. So not possibly at this time, but I have considered it, per se, right? I do have with my awesome wife, Deepthi Lamba, who's an amazing occultist and artist in her own right. We are considering starting a kind of podcast soon, but not really a magical or an occult podcast necessarily. It's more very much listening to people, really people who aren't really even featured, or we're not. I mean, yeah, I'm sure we chat with Lon or someone, right? But it's our friends and our people who really never get to even describe their journeys, right? So we are thinking of that, and that's a way of teaching, right? But formal, structured, it's a possibility, but I really don't have the the bandwidth to take that up right now.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. All right,
Yeah.
so now we're going to go to the occult, the John Stewart segment of the show, or the occult current events. This is where
Sure.
we want to know that you, as a practitioner, a scholar, and a contributor to the study and the knowledge of magic, what can you say is the current state of the practice? Is it, do you see hope for it? Is it going down the toilet? I mean, what are your hopes for it? We'd love to hear from you on this.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And, there are, many voices, right, in the Agora, which has always been the case, except for the fact that the Agora today is literally all around us, right? We're immersed in it. We're surrounded by a thing. Everyone has not just a channel, but a megaphone, right? And everyone wants to be the main character in the in the Agora, right? So
Yeah.
there's probably too much of that out there.
Yep.
And so as a consumer, right, you're drowning in kind of information overload. And so what's really important is firstly to discover yourself, right, and to listen to your own path and kind of keep it simple. I mean, right now there's also this sense of acquisition mindset. Really, everyone's collecting things. I'm fairly certain even most people who have watched a bunch of videos or have every amazing book out there haven't really tried them out, haven't really done the work, right? You've got to combine practice with study, with learning, with teaching, right? You can't just do that. You don't need a lot of books. I mean, you can literally take the Testament of Solomon, like this little slim, excellent Hadean Press text by Brian Johnson, and that's pretty much all you need. And pretty much that's all that Solomon had, right, to work with the demons. So essentially, people need to actually practice, note down their experiences, share them, and so on. Not just kind of collect it for the sake of collecting. Now, in
True.
terms of the where things are going, if I look at it at three levels, the first is in the very narrow or small field of the experts, right? I think we're lucky to have, the hard work still going on, right? Joseph Peterson, David Rankine, and Stephen Skinner, and so many others. That hopefully will continue, right?
Mhm.
We've got a large, large pool of people who are uh, putting out, let's say, 101s of magic, right? And I guess that's going to always be there, right? And it's maybe, even if it's not needed, they're going to put on their interpretation of it. And then you have the not out in the realm, like basically the stuff that's way out there, right? And not fitting in the kind of within the people who color outside the lines, right?
Mhm.
And essentially that's where the really interesting stuff is. And everyone should try to get a bit out of their comfort zone, is what I would say, right? Maybe it's learning a bit about Ifa and Kimbanda, or maybe it's going into a little workshop at your local bodega and so on, and trying to pick up some candles and working with them. There are phenomena, like there's this beautiful bookstore in Chicago that I went to. It claims it's the oldest active bookshop in America, right? And I mean, he was doing, apart from having his beautiful books and stuff, he was actually doing various gatherings and meetings for people to come and practice, right?
Mhm.
So that's the kind of stuff we need, I would say.
Bringing people together. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
did
yeah,
notice that phenomenon too, that we have a lot of knowledge hoarders. Like people
yeah.
take a lot of workshops, but they never really practice it.
Uh-huh.
So like I've seen people even here in the Philippines, they'll take every workshop. They'll take
Right.
every class, every lecture. But for them to actually embody it, they don't ever do it. And that
Right.
stunts the growth, because I can watch every single cooking video by Gordon Ramsay, but if I don't get over
Yeah,
the stove, I'm not learning to cook. So
exactly.
the practitioners out there are kind of like rolling their eyes at the knowledge junkies, because the attending of the workshop, that's only the first step. People
Hmm.
have actually got to practice, and people forget that at times. All right,
Yeah.
so we're going to go now into the segment of Occult X. At this point, we would like to learn something from you. Now, of course,
Okay.
at this segment, this is where you can teach us anything you'd like. This is where you, the master, you, the teacher, you, the guru, you, the specialist, imparts knowledge to us. Now, the sky's the limit. Whatever you'd want, just let us know what you need, and we're here to learn.
Sure. So maybe I'm going to, in the interest of not moving around too much, I mean, I was thinking I'll walk around and show you some of my altars and books, but maybe I'll share one of my daily practices, right? Now, to be honest, I don't do it daily. I wish I did, but,
Mhm.
it is a daily practice. And it's something I'm considering putting out as a little pamphlet, with Hadean, with some illustrations that hopefully Dee will do with me. And that's so here's what I do right now. I'm assuming, and again, maybe I shouldn't assume, so I'll start from the basics, right? So I have a daily practice with my altar downstairs. So what I'm going to try to, I should actually, I'll show you the altar, but I'll describe the practice, and then I'll go down and we'll see if we can capture that, right? So I
Sounds fine.
face east, okay? My primary altar, my workstation, as it were, right? My magical workstation is in my study, and it's on the east wall, right? So we have, by the way, we're a very magical household, right? We have altars everywhere. We have protections everywhere. I have witch balls in the east window. These are balls that have been consecrated and created by a real witch that distract and prevent evil. And typically that they're placed in the east window. We have other protective things around the house, including graveyard dirt from certain soldiers and generals, to kind of give us that protection. But coming back to my daily practice, right? So I tend to begin with a general, cleansing and a general banishing. Most often, the I do the pentagram ritual, which again, for those who don't know, and Lon Milo has the best, I think, video on YouTube. But you kind of face east, center yourself the way I do it, right? And it's actually related to this extra thing that I'm going to describe to you all. I kind of, visualize myself standing where I am. I expand my body, my astral body, and I take breaths deeper and deeper until I'm actually striding the world, and then I'm actually out there somewhere in space, and I see these beautiful lights, and I draw one of them down towards me, right to my head, and then I do the Arte, Malkut, Vegebra, Vegedla, Leolam, Amen, and then I do the signs of the Emperor, and the threshold and stuff with Yahweh, Adonai, Elohim, Agla, and then the Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, with the addition, which a lot of people don't do, with Metatron above and Sandalphon below, right? Creating the entire dome. And then I often, when I do that, I have this, extremely strong experience of having very, very tall, very, very powerful archangels standing around me, right? So I've had that many, many times. So I know it's working. So then I do the hexagram, right? Which again, for those who don't know, is INRI, Yodnan, Resh, Yod, Virgo, Isis, Mighty Mother, Scorpio, of Sol, Destroyer, Isis of Office, Osiris, Eao, right? With all the intonations, and then the hexagram, and then I do the middle pillar. Now that's fairly standard, right? But then the additional bit I do is something I call walking the worlds. Now remember, I've brought that cosmic energy back down here. um, I I do the very classical Egyptian hands up kind of thing, right, from pointing up, and I do Agathos Daimon be praised, right, 3 times, and then I do Sol be praised, and I'm walking the worlds, as it were, and so I really call it walking the worlds, right? Sol be praised, Mercury be praised, Venus be praised, Earth be praised, Selene be praised, Mars be praised, or I use the different names. I tend to take a breath as we go past Mars to Jupiter, and then Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, and then I let that energy out, right? And I feel myself kind of really charged up, and I've encapsulated this entire galaxy almost or whatever in me, right? So that's something I'd like to share with everyone. It's not very hard, and you can do it. And I think, I'm sure you all know, Agathos Daimon is the kind of almost a cosmocrator, the a very powerful figure to work with. So that's one thing, right? And last thing I'll share is something I learned recently from this beautiful book. I can't quite remember the name right now, but um, one very interesting way of translating your physical state and just getting out of the being locked in, almost changing your like going into a different altered state is, and he actually compares it to how every Egyptian statue, they're sitting like this, and their neck is a little forward and bent forward. So he says, if you just do that, right, raise your neck up a bit and tilt it forward, you open what he calls the gate of the ancestors behind you, and you almost feel yourself going into a different state, because it pretty much clears your breathing, or your energy flow, right? I've seen that work for me. I continually do a breathing operation to raise energy, like I'm almost doing it all the time, and I've seen that it kind of, you feel elevated. So I'm going to pause here to see if you guys have any questions on that. But
Wait,
yeah.
anything you want to ask?
What's that?
Wait, anything you want to ask?
No, actually, I was just kind of messing around with the neck thing, and that's neat because you can kind of feel
Yeah.
it opening like a mouth on the back of your neck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and because you're straightening basically, I think it's clearing those. You're just making that space, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay,
yeah.
wonderful. All right, without, if we wanted to know more about this walking the worlds technique, is that something exclusive to you, or is there a certain reference text that your readers
No, it's completely mine, right? So I do intend to sketch it out or put out a little pamphlet, maybe a video with it, right? So stay tuned for that. I mean, yeah. Now, I did want to, I think, I know, Wade, you got a couple of copies of my other text, my poetry book. I don't know if you read the Odontiad, which
Oh yeah,
is this beautiful art is by my wife, Deepthi Lamba, right? Oh, yeah, there
yeah,
you go. And which is also, this art is also hers, right? And you probably saw
yeah.
this thing is, 4 amazing Gothic tales, including the one with the red dragon. My favorite is the 1001 Ghosts by Alexander Dumas, right? I don't know if you read that yet, but it's got this whole vampire in the Carpathian story, which is phenomenal, right?
Yeah, I started reading the first one. I really need to make time to sit down and read fiction because it's been a while. But honestly, I loved how they used to have. They would just like casually throw magic into everything back in the day. Like I don't know if you read like the original Faust. Yeah, it was neat that they're just like, oh yeah, and by the way, this guy is like the original FAFO story.
Yeah,
and and Faust was Faust around and find out, right?
right. No, absolutely. But yeah, so I'm I'm really appreciative you guys had me. I am working on, as I mentioned, volume 2 of the magical art. I mean, technically it's been done for a while, but I'm researching a lot more and kind of really working on my extensive introductions. It's going to be a phenomenal text. And Joseph Peterson has kindly agreed to kind of review, kind of write the foreword. So stay tuned for that. I also have a what I thought was an independent story, a novella, but it's kind of morphing into a collection of texts. So the first one, which is fully written, is called Unseen in the Crowd, right? And think of it as The Handmaid's Tale meets the Underground Railroad, right? So it's set in current times, and it's really a very, very interesting kind of plot. I won't give too much away, but I have other stories. I have a story called Clean Skin and others. So these are coming together, spontaneously. So I'm letting them kind of work out in however they want before I really, put them out there. But yeah, so I have stuff. My website is my first name, last name.com. So aamanlamba.com, right? That has everything. My books are at, on Amazon and on Hadean Press. And I do have a YouTube channel. Again, it's all on my website. So aamanlamba.com is the best.
Well, can we get a link to that on the?
Yeah, sure. How do I do that?
That'll be the one.
Yeah, it just pops up on the text window.
Yeah.
Add it. It's taking a while to that. I'll show on the stream right there. Is that the one?
Yes, perfect.
For those who want to be able to get Aaman's books,
right? I am on Facebook also, right? I think it's facebook.com/aamanlamba.author. I think I haven't checked the URL, but it should be. Yeah.
Oh, that being said and done, when can we expect more or less Magical Art Volume 2 to come out? Is there like a set?
Very good question. The publishing calendar is very hard to pin down, right? It also is relying on me actually completing it. So what happened very interestingly with Magical Art Volume 1, I gave it, right? It went through editing, but I kept finding more things to do and more appendices to add. So I had final last volume, this is it, no more final. But so now Elizabeth's like, finish it, like just give it to me when it's done, right? Don't do the more editions on the
golly, what's that like? Oh my god, I have no idea, right?
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, how long did it take between like the final submission until actual printing of Magical Art? Was that like a long time?
Good question. I'd say about 6 to 7 months. I'm just guessing. I'd have to go back and see my notes, but it's probably that, right? It's under a year, but yeah, it takes 6 to 7 months really. And I do highly recommend the hardcover, which is a limited edition. There are only 300 copies, so if people can't get it because it comes with beautiful glossy text and fonts. But that being said, I'm a firm believer, and maybe I just want to mention this. I'm not a fan of this trend in a culture, which is these very, very high priced selective editions and all these extremely overpriced, occult collectors, because that's again hoarding, right?
I hate that.
Paperback.
I really hate that. That's one of my personal peeves. When they're like, oh yeah, well here's this book, I'm going to redo the Grimoire of Honorius or whatever, or the Grimoire of Bolognium. But it's going to be, sealskin cover, gold stamp with 24 karat gold, acid free parchment, and it's all,
Well,
and the blood of an actual virgin. You're like, this is a $6,000 book. I just want to read it.
Yeah.
True, but let's also give credit where credit is due. They're collectors. Some people want that. I mean, some people would like to spend the extra $500 to have the very jacketed, full-colored, hardbound edition. But if you're making it the only edition, then that's a good move.
That's correct.
But that's the thing.
Comes in paperback, right?
All of my favorite grimoires have wine stains and spilled wax on them and everything, because I wouldn't want to do that with one of these archival editions.
Exactly, because you wouldn't even want to use. It wouldn't be practical if you're going to spend $800 for a book and you're too afraid to use it. So
exactly. Like in Ferris Bueller, he had the car in the garage that he just rubbed it with a diaper. He never drove it around. That would be that book.
Exactly. So I admire authors like Aaman who have the basic edition, makes it accessible, but also a hardbound edition. Like for me personally, the gold standard of collector's editions in books is anathema when it comes to artisan books, because these are shelf trophies. It's like, wow, that looks beautiful. But I've also seen, I'm actually very careful. I don't enjoy the book because it's so expensive each page. You're making sure you don't tear it. You're being extra careful. So in the industry, it's an option, but it shouldn't be the only option. I have seen authors. I've seen authors
if they want to do the collector's edition, limited copy or limited to 666 prints of this with the leather and the gold stamping and the the virgin parchment and all, but also you can get it on regular paper or as an ebook.
Right. Which is why we're really lucky, right? Sarah Mastros, Jason Miller, Lon, Steve, they all have, Stephen Skinner, Joseph Peterson have all done it, that you can have access to it. You don't have to stick with the final definitive version, right? Only.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Aaman, thank you so much for joining us. This was a very educational episode. Don't go anywhere. We're going to still talk to you after the show, but we're going to end the stream. And next week, Wade, you and I are back, and we're going to have a special guest that we're going to announce within the week to come, all about the goddess Isis, right here on Magic TV.
Is this next?